They were all in one long line, and they'd come in with the food and sugar cane and stuff like that, and to show that they were friendly and they wanted to trade with us.
The first recorded contact between the Highlanders of Papua New Guinea and white men occurred in the 1930s during Australian-led gold prospecting expeditions. In 1930, brothers Mick and Dan Leahy, along with patrol officer Jim Taylor, made their way into the Wagi Valley, discovering hundreds of thousands of people living in isolation. The Highlanders had no prior knowledge of the outside world and believed the white men were spirits or supernatural beings. The explorers were equally shocked to find such a dense and organized population in what they assumed was uninhabited terrain. This contact marked the beginning of rapid change in the highlands, including the introduction of Western goods, new beliefs, and government systems. While mostly peaceful, the encounter brought confusion, fear, and eventual transformation of Highland society. Here is a video about that. Enjoy.
For several years, the Lays searched the highland valleys for commercial quantities of gold. They were unsuccessful. They began using aeroplanes on their prospecting expeditions, flying out over unknown country to survey the land before venturing in by foot. It was on one such flight that the Lay brothers first looked down on the Wagi, the biggest valley of them all. Soon after their flight, the Lays walked into this valley, and here at last they discovered gold. They set up their final base camp, surrounded by 250,000 more people whose existence had not even been suspected by the outside world.
There were not so many around the first day, but the next day there was a big crowd arrive. They were all in one long line, and they'd come in with the food and sugar cane and stuff like that, and to show that they were friendly and they wanted to trade with us. But I think they did think that we were something a bit more than ordinary human beings. It wasn't very long before we had more food than we ever could hope to use. And they were bringing more and more. You couldn't stop them because they just went wild after the trade. The beads we had and the shell and the axes. I think out of all the people on our trips, the Hagen people were the easiest and the best of the lot for us to deal with. The big man had come forward and he'd address us. I forget now, I don't think we had no, we didn't. We had no interpreter then. But they used to stand up there and give speeches as though we knew every word that they were saying. We'd try to explain to the people that we didn't want to steal their ground. We just wanted to straighten it out for this big bird to land. Of course, you couldn't talk to them, but you'd have to explain it as best we could with sign language. And they helped us. And we used to give them shell and beads and things like that for coming. But they really enjoyed it because they'd sing and dance around. They didn't mind the stamping of the ground to pack it up after we had filled in the drains they had around their gardens. They loved the opportunity to have a big sing around the place. And you'd have hundreds of them around singing all the time.
They tell the natives a few days before that, on their hands, that so many days that the barloos had come. They didn't know what a barloos was. A barloos was a bird, you see. Well, they said that this bird had come and he'd come out of the air and it'd make a noise. They'd make a noise like the plane. I think the thing that struck them most of all was the fact that we could sort of tell them that we'll sleep 2 or 3 nights and out of the air will come this bird and it'll fall down here and it'll bring all these things, and out of its belly someone will get out.
Barusikam na urito kirauti by brukuna. Or get something by put on me prakisimi or papa mama bromio story or sim. Na masta make it talk. Emi makim rohani or sim. Barusi by camorosem. Now the thing to or sim, oh by kirauti brukuna. Something by come down. Or get a kanaka kamapuna walk.
I remember the day the first plane arrived on the Wagi Strip. I had a good pair of binoculars, and I was watching for the aeroplane, and I picked it up about 20 minutes before it landed. And I said, well, here it comes. They were more or less terrified, didn't know what it was.
Palu sini ne, medana kaya to kaya lukon ne gana ne namu. Palu sabor nama musima kolibero kuni kera ko kaya kuni ne mikasi lo ima saro ko ko sini ne mukuno tumi ke na kami ko ko unu na kuni ke. Kisi ne so solo kubuni.
Una ori kita man meri ori pasi ori krain no gutru. Ori to ko baba chete baba yumi finish tru. Na masa meki go na fighting bros bro. Na fighting sigini bro ri to ko inogat mi brigi ka ko yumi nogat.
The pilot, Grabowski, was a very tall man, about 6'1" or 2, and he had a flying suit and a white helmet with these great goggles. And he got out of the plane. Then he opened the door, and Kingsbury, the geologist, he got out of the inside of the plane. There must have been 3,000 natives lined up along the airstrip. And they were absolutely amazed, the people, and just looked up with wonderment.
Keep in mind that in Papua New Guinea, the highland communities were among the last to encounter Europeans and were introduced to Western civilization later than the coastal populations. Yet today, the highlands are more developed than many of the coastal regions. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on your notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos. See you at the next one.